It has now been only a couple of days after a bombshell revelation rocked the news media all around the world. A US intelligence whistleblower claims that there has been a major UFO retrieval program, even bodies recovered and partly and fully intact alien craft. What can we say about this story? Joining me now are Gary Heseltine from the United Kingdom, Vice President of ICER, Giorgio Piacenza from Peru, representative of Peru, and astronomer Dr. Eamonn Ansbro from the Republic of Ireland. Welcome, gentlemen.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Thank you, Robert.
Thank you for joining me. Now, this is a story that really struck me as it's almost impossible, right? The Debrief came out with this story on June 5th, written by two renowned New York Times journalists, Leslie Kean and Ralph Blumenthal, which is the first weird thing, because they're from the New York Times and not from the Debrief. Why are they posting it on the Debrief? And they came out with the story of this man here. His name is David Charles Grosh. He was a decorated Air Force veteran and former employee of the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency and the National Reconnaissance Office. And from 2019 to 2021, he served as the Reconnaissance Office liaison to the then newly formed UAP task force. So he was in precisely the exact position in which you could have learned what Grosh has now disclosed. So can I ask you, Gary, could you summarize which are the revelations that we've just learned by Mr. Grosh?
I think the story is it's still developing, and it's going to be really interesting over the next few days. But in summary, it would appear that this story to me initially has the gravitas of being the biggest story since the December 16th New York Times article in 2017, which in a sense launched the idea of ATIP and Luis Elizondo onto the world scene UFO-wise. And that had went around the world, and I think this story is already going around the world. I think what makes this a bit different is that this person has an impeccable military and intelligence background, and when he was interviewed by Ross Coulthard, who's an award-winning journalist, on video, he made it absolutely clear that the intelligence community, the US Air Force, etc., or the US government at some point have recovered both intact and parts of what we would say alien craft. He's unequivocal about that. And then I think what's even more amazing is that when Ross Coulthard says, so we have spacecraft, he says, yeah, we've got quite a few. And he basically then goes on to say, and what about bodies? And he's a little bit coy because of his classification and in his paraphrasing, really. But he basically said, if you've got something flying and it crashes, then you will come across bodies, pilots, dead pilots. So inference that alien bodies have been recovered. Now, I think what makes this significant is his impeccable military and intelligence background. This isn't just somebody who is making a claim. He certainly has the credentials to back it up. And I don't think the likes of Ross Coulthard, Leslie Kean, and Ralph Blumenthal would go anywhere near this guy if they hadn't done very thorough checks into his background. And the fact that he's come back in a sense with flying colours means that this is not just an ordinary person speaking out. He was a part of the task force, so clearly he may have been privy to classified special access programs or become aware of them. And I think that's maybe the key thing, is that he has become aware through various high-level people within the intelligence community who have told him that there are indeed programs.
I see. Now, what was so interesting for me to read was that he also talks about a secret sort of Cold War going on for many decades about identifying and exploiting potential or alleged UFO debris and craft to use it for strategic advantages. And Giorgio, I wanted to ask you, what is your take on this? Do you think this is possible?
I think that it is completely possible because it is validating serious ufological research that has been going on for many decades and many other serious testimonials by credible people. And also, we have Thomas Monheim, the Intelligence Community Inspector General, considering this credible and urgent. Besides that, his own attorney, Charles McCulloch III, was the first Inspector General of the intelligence community, and he's also taking him very seriously and helping him out. And all the witnesses that have come forth from the Air Force, from the Navy, are also helping him out and validating what he says. So who are we to simply blank statement deny this? I think that the UFO community needs to be happy that this is taking place, not necessarily take every word as an absolute truth, but be really open-minded for this opportunity and probably expect many more revelations coming from many other persons after this situation.
Right. So, Eamonn, do you think that this is the moment that we have all been waiting for, disclosure with a capital D?
I think it's right on the fringe for it. However, I have some negative side to this as well, because I know it's very exciting news, all right, but you also have to look at the background of what's been presented. And first of all, I know he's a high-up intelligence person and has been supported by many other key high-up persons as well for these statements to come out. But what I find interesting is that, like everything else, there is no evidence. He hasn't presented videos, pictures, anything at all. And that's one of the weak parts of this. Secondly, the media hasn't taken it up, or should I say, some of the key media outlets haven't taken this up. And maybe that's a surprise, but then you have to look back where they're coming from. There are controlling forces that are trying to slow this down. But overall, I think because it's on the fringe of possibly a big disclosure, I'm hoping actually there would be lots of footage, videos, material of all sorts to actually support his claims.
I see. So you're kind of suspicious that this may actually be a lie and promulgated by the US intelligence community. Am I correct in assuming that? No, I'm not saying it's a lie, because he is supported by high-up persons, which Giorgio has just mentioned. My concern actually is what I've stated, that there's no evidence. These are just statements. Secondly, why hasn't the major media come out with all this? I think it will eventually come out. But I think, as Giorgio mentioned earlier, is that there's factions at play here on both sides. So yeah, I think there's a lot to unfold yet in this, and I understand there will be more material coming out in the next few days. Now, you're right. Major news outlets have not reported this yet, but The Guardian, for example, did. The Guardian was actually quite current in their reporting, and they already reported about it one day after the event. And many other news outlets all around the world have started reporting on this. I found news from Hungary, from Slovakia, from Vietnam, from the Czech Republic, from Norway, from all kinds of countries, including some major German outlets, but the biggest ones are still kind of having a look at this and trying to decide whether they want to go with the story or not. And I find it quite interesting to note that this story was not reported in the New York Times or in the Washington Post first, but it was on a relatively unknown technology website, The Debrief, which does excellent reporting, but it's not very well known. And also the major news outlets, except for Fox News, but let's say CNN, MSNBC, and all of those, they have not reported on it either. So is this an indication that this may probably be true, and that this revelation goes against the current status quo, the current elite in the United States? What do you think?
Shall I take that one?
Yeah.
Go on.
Okay. Yeah. I think the situation is that it's a wait and see with the statements that have come out. And I think what will be major is that when everybody's unanimous that it is a reality about the craft and everything else and other beings, you have to realize also that we have a worldview on this as well with mankind. And there's, I think because of the perception of, or should I say, some part of the audience of society, one has to take care of that situation, because it's very difficult to integrate a reality of this nature, because it is, if it's all true, it's massive. It's just, it's so historical, it's unbelievable. So the thing is, I think they're taking care of this. And it's no surprise that NASA in the last 12 months have been studying the religious aspect of this. There's been 35 individuals dealing with, different aspects of religion, because I think they're suspecting that this is the big one to come. But it's a slow, pace at the moment. We're trying to get everybody on the table. So
yes. Now, talking about the repercussions, Gary, you must have thought about the repercussions of first contact with a non-human intelligence for quite some time, being the vice president of ICER. What can we expect to happen?
I think it's a big question mark. I mean, in the past, and probably one of the main reasons why this subject has not been admitted to by the US is because of the Brookings Institute report from 1960, which basically said that there might be economic crisis, there may be real panic, as it were. But I think the world has moved on. So I think we're into a slightly different phase now. We're at 2023. I think a lot of people now are pretty accepting that there's going to be intelligent life out there. And I think across the board now, most astronomers will all say the same thing. Scientists will say the same thing. However, the big problem we've had up until now is for the scientists is, where's the credible proof? Well, I think this case really hinges on the next few steps that's to emerge. And one of the things I think that came out and was mentioned yesterday was when I think several members of the Congress were asked on TV what were their opinion of this revelation. And they basically said, look, we are going to press for a public hearing. So that straight away put this on a public footing in a way that it hasn't. And I think that the media, in terms of the real mainstream attention, will come as and when there are these witness hearings. I think it's all up in the air to a degree, because it depends really on what other things are going to emerge over the next few days. But as it stands, I think the big key moment in terms of a disclosure world breakthrough, as it were, would be as and when we have public witness hearings. But the fact that they've already, in principle, already been agreed to, and they're going to look at this whistleblower claim, if that all pans out, I think that's the catalyst moment. I think this is the precursor to something bigger. And if we get the public hearings, I think that's when the national world media in every country will have to start taking it seriously in perhaps that they haven't done, or not to the degree that we would like them to. But I think it's coming. And I think the societal implications are huge. I mean, most ufologists who studied it for a long time will say that the idea of crash retrievals and trying to reverse engineer all around the world, if you've got a crash UFO, you are naturally going to try to get that technology for yourself because of the huge leap in technology, etc. I think that the implications could be great, but we're not quite there yet. But the effects could be absolutely seismic. But I think that the public are ready for it now in a way that they weren't 50, 60 years ago.
So, so this is the long-term implications. The short-term implications are the hearings that are already being talked about, as you mentioned, Gary. Brian Antin from News Nation Now reports here on Twitter that the chairman of the House Oversight Committee, Republican James Comer, intends to have hearings on UFOs and is interested in this report and whistleblower David Grush's claims. So this is going to be very exciting, and we at the International Coalition for Extraterrestrial Research are going to have a very close look at this and see how it unfolds. Thank you so much for being with me, Gary Heseltine, Giorgio Piacenza, and Dr. Eamonn Ansbro for the show.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you also for watching this. If you want to have more information on our activities, please have a look at our website, ICER.network. And we are also present on Facebook and Twitter and YouTube, of course. See you around. Bye.